Hey guys, Aaron Cybertron Zheng here, and today I am bringing you some commentary on the best of 3 set I had against Sam Johnson in the top 4 at Anaheim Regionals 2 weekends ago. I've done this before, once against Paul Chua in that set from US Nationals, but basically in this kind of video I want to analyze a best of 3 set live and basically tell you guys what I was thinking at the time since this was streamed. So if you enjoyed this kind of content, please show your support by leaving a like in the video and giving me any feedback, and if you want to see it for other best of 3 sets that aren't even my tournaments, definitely let me know. I figured this would be a pretty cool way to incorporate how I play in tournaments and in real life into this channel. So, you already know my team. This is going to be from Sam's perspective, and you see the 6 on top: Salamence, Bronzong, Smeargle, Kyogre, Mawile, and Groudon. Sam's 6 are Liepard, Smeargle, Talonflame, Togekiss, Rayquaza, and Kyogre. Now, in team preview, there were a couple things I pointed out immediately. First of all, I thought Salamence, Bronzong, Kyogre, Groudon was by far my safest 4 options. Didn't really feel the need to bring Smeargle, and mainly because I wanted to go with heavy offense in this game. Mawile was definitely something I was considering for games 2 and 3 potentially, but game 1, I just wanted to go with my safest option of Salamence and Bronzong, and it works out perfectly as he leads with Liepard, Rayquaza. The reason why I think this is the safest option is because I get the Intimidate off against Talonflame and Rayquaza should he bring it. Togekiss just gets hurt by Gyro Ball. I have the Lumberry to deal with the Smeargle. Liepard can't do too much. And if Kyogre came out here, maybe would be the biggest threat, leading something like Rayquaza and Kyogre, but this works out pretty perfectly. However, I don't know of any information on Sam's team just yet, so I want to figure that out, and he can actually go for the fake out Draco Meteor play if he is running Draco Meteor on Rayquaza, so that's something else I want to see. And the reason why he can do that on Salamence is because if I protect, he can just Encore me, so I know I might be losing a Pokemon instantly, but I'm okay with that. I feel like I have enough power with Kyogre and Groudon in the back. However, I don't want to just set up Trick Room immediately because Salamence is faster, so should Salamence stay around for the field any longer and I set up Trick Room, then I kind of have to burn a Trick Room turn sacrificing Salamence, and I don't want to do just that. So this first one I decide to just Mega Evolve, go for the Hyper Voice, go for the Gyro Ball, as Sam's Liepard goes for the Fake Out onto my Salamence, flinching it. So Rayquaza actually doesn't go for the Draco Meteor, instead it goes for the Swords Dance, which I was not anticipating. I'm actually happier to see Swords Dance because my team deals a little bit better with physical Rayquaza than one with Draco Meteor. And I'm not carrying Draco Meteor on my Salamence either, so that's pretty interesting. I do get the Gyro Ball off against his Rayquaza, and who doesn't Mega Evolve to conserve the Airlock, which is, a smart decision in case he wants to try to catch my Groudon on a switch in when Kyogre's in on his end. So he knows that the speed increase doesn't really help much since he's already faster than Bronzong and slower than Mega Salamence. This next turn I decide to just go straight for the Double Edge and the Gyro Ball. I figure, Rayquaza can go for the Extreme Speed or it can go for the Protect, but I'm not losing very much out on here since I'm the fastest Pokemon. Liepard here just goes for the Foul Play onto Salamence, trying to put it in maybe KO range from an Extreme Speed, but I do go for the Gyro Ball onto the Liepard. I knew that Hyper Voice wouldn't knock out the Rayquaza, so I wanted to play it as safely as possible. He still doesn't know I don't carry Draco Meteor, which is something I could use to my advantage as well. Now at this point, I think it's finally time to set up Trick Room, because I might be losing my Salamence here. I figure he's probably going to want to go for Extreme Speed onto Salamence, but I'm not sure if that'll knock me out since Salamence is pretty bulky, and he's at +1 as opposed to +2, and I'm faster, so I figure I can just Double Edge into Rayquaza and Trick Room, even if he Extreme Speeds and Foul Plays, and I can get the Trick Room up. The only issue here is if Liepard carries Taunt, which he hasn't gone for yet, so I'm not sure if he carries it or not. However, I've been Gyro Balling, this entire game so far, so I figure maybe I've baited him into not taunting me, even if he does carry it. So here he finally does choose to Mega Evolve Rayquaza, wanting to get the increase in attack because, he is finally going to go for attack with Rayquaza as opposed to Swords Dance or Protect. It also does tell me his moveset is most likely Extreme Speed and Dragon Ascent. That's what I'm basically thinking at this point. So he is going to go not for the Extreme Speed, and I actually just get the Double Edge off and knock out the Rayquaza in 1 hit. So that's really good for me here. I was really happy to see that because I know Liepard here is either going to, since it didn't go for the priority taunt, either going to knock out Salamence or Foul Play the Bronzong. Exactly, that's what it does. Foul Plays Bronzong, but I get the Trick Room up, and that's exactly what I was hoping for. Going into this game, that was kind of my strategy. Hamper off with offense in the beginning and then set up Trick Room so that in the late game, even if my opponent has a couple of Pokemon left, like he doesn't have enough momentum to keep on switching in and out to stall out my Trick Room turns. That's a weakness with Trick Room turns and teams in general. If you set up Trick Room too early, your opponent can outstall you with it by switching and making good Protect plays, and then as a result you won't have enough offense in the late game. So I like to kind of save it for the later end of the game, and it's worked out perfectly thus far. This next turn, I actually wasn't fully thinking here. I forgot the option, like he could actually Encore with Liepard, and so I actually just end up going for the Gyro Ball and the Hyper Voice. But I figured he might want to predict the Bronzong switching out into Kyogre or Groudon and get free damage off with the Brave Bird, so decided to just stay in, and he doesn't go for the Encore, fortunately enough. Gets a critical hit. I'm not actually sure whether that matters or not. I don't think it does, but you never know. But I breathe a sigh of relief when I see like he doesn't go for the Encore, because sure, I lose both of my Pokemon this turn, but now this has set me up perfectly to bring in both of my Primals, and I still have 3 turns of Trick Room. So, Talonflame and Liepard are Pokemon that don't carry Protect most of the time. It's very rare for them to carry Protect. Sometimes seen on Talonflame. I know Nikolai Zelensky, World Champion of 2014, used it to get top 8 at St. Louis Regionals, and he did have Protect on Talonflame. But it's relatively rare, and I figure now that I've got both of my Primals in, and I've got 3 turns of Trick Room left, I should be able to win this one, barring a double Protect on his end and a little bit of luck. However, I still want to play a little bit safely here. So, bringing in Groudon and Kyogre, you'll see that the way my Pokemon are trained, Kyogre actually gets the rain up. Normally, that's not good when you have Kyogre and Groudon, but Groudon doesn't need to use the Fire-type attack since it only has Fire Punch. Its main means of offense on this team is Precipice Blades, so now I'm free to spam Precipice Blades and Water Spout. However, you'll notice, obviously, my opponent does have a Talonflame on the field, and I've got one little trump card on my Groudon, and that's Rock Slide. Rock Slide is, not exactly the most popular option on Groudon. I know a lot of good players actually criticize Rock Slide, and it was a last-minute decision since I didn't really test with Sword Stance or Substitute, and I was having a little bit of trouble against Rayquaza especially, and so I wanted just to have another means of hitting it, and I figured this is the perfect time to just protect Kyogre and Rock Slide. It's a little bit risky because he could obviously 1 Brave Bird into Groudon, and 2 I could miss Rock Slide and he could go for the Encore, but there's little reason for him to Brave Bird into Groudon. The reason why I end up protecting Kyogre there is to block a potential Brave Bird, which is exactly what he does. He does reveal the taunt, which is really important information. I'm honestly not quite sure why he would reveal that information. Maybe he was hoping that I would try to get a Sword Stance or a Substitute up, which would make sense, and that is really good for me to know that Liepard indeed does carry taunt. So Rock Slide connects with both Pokemon, and I pick up a double knockout with 2 turns of Trick Room remaining. However, like I mentioned, my opponent all he needs is a double Protect, and he's instantly back in this game, in a very good position to win. So he brings in Kyogre, and I know this is how it's going to play out. Basically, he's going to protect this turn, going to go for the attacks. Don't have Substitute or any stat increasing moves, so that's not going to matter. Following turn, I'm going to go for the Precipice Blades and the Water Spout. If he doesn't get the double Protect, then I should win, even if Precipice Blades misses, because then Kyogre has done more damage to him, and I can win the one-on-one. But if he, gets the double Protect off, then it's a lot dicier, and it might come down to whether I get a burn with Scald or not. So, first turn plays out exactly how I was anticipating it to. He goes for the Protect, and this next turn, coming down to Fade a little bit, since it is the last turn of Trick Room, and his Kyogre should be faster, given that his team is so fast and, offense oriented as opposed to mine, which is a little bit bulkier and more defensive, methodical play. So, he doesn't get the double Protect, fortunately enough, and Precipice Blades connects, and it actually picks up the 1-hit KO because it's single target, so not getting the spread reduction damage, and I pick up game 1 against Sam, 2-0. Even though it was, in the end I was able to win with both of my Primals at full health, all Sam needed was 1 double Protect, and it would have completely turned the game around. So I knew I still had to play pretty careful, but I was pretty content with that game. I felt like maybe there were a couple of misplays that Sam didn't capitalize off of, but it was misplays that weren't exactly like awful plays. It was more like if Sam made the right reads. So I didn't feel that bad about it. I was pretty content with my play, and going into game 2, which we're about to get started with, I figured, what adjustments do I really need to make? And I had to think, obviously, what adjustments can Sam make? And, I was able to just kind of roll over him with Salamence and Bronzong, so I thought, maybe it's worth bringing Smeargle and Mawile, but there's not that much that it can help me with. I mean, the main reason you want to bring Smeargle is if your opponent has a Smeargle and is spamming Dark Void because you have Crafty Shield, but I had enough answers to his Smeargle already. He didn't have Fake Out pressure from something like Kangaskhan. He did obviously have it from Liepard, but Kangaskhan is obviously a little bit more threatening when he gets something like Power Up Punch too, whereas Liepard can only foul play. And I won the last game because Salamence was able to outspeed the Rayquaza and the Liepard. So, I don't want to change that up. Why bring Mawile when it worked out perfectly? Since, I'm able to outspeed the majority of his Pokemon, get the Hyper Voices up, and then set up Trick Room. So it's the idea of attacking with your fast Pokemon out of Trick Room, then set up Trick Room, sacrificing your fast Pokemon, and then getting your slow Pokemon in and sweeping from there. So going into game 2, I didn't really change up my strategy at all. I figured, worked out perfectly. It feels like I have a pretty good team matchup against Sam as well, since typically the more defensive, Trick Room oriented team fares well against a fast-paced team like Sam's, as long as you can get Trick Room up. I thought the one adjustment he might make is leading with Smeargle, but I was more than well equipped to deal with Smeargle with Salamence and Bronzong as my lead. Because if you're Focus Sash, then I can just protect Gyro Ball you turn 1 and then Hyper Voice you the next turn, and if you're Scarf, I can just Gyro Ball you for a knockout. So it really came down to Sam's, I think, lead matchup, and I thought, maybe if you bring in Kyogre and Rayquaza, that would be a little bit tricky, because I can't go into my Groudon. You could, like, Dragon Ascent Water Spout or something, but then again, that's still pretty weak to Salamence, and he doesn't know that I don't have Draco Meteor yet, because I haven't revealed my 4th move, which is Tailwind on Salamence. So, I end up just going with the same leads. Like I said, no reason for adjustment in terms of Pokemon. It's worked out perfectly, and I don't think he has any better lead matchup than what can beat Salamence and Bronzong. So, I see the Smeargle and the Rayquaza, and I'm actually pretty happy to see this for a bunch of reasons. One, my assumption is that Smeargle here, I thought maybe it would carry Focus Sash, because we haven't seen the items of any of Smeargle, Rayquaza, or Liepard, but those are all Pokemon that like to carry Focus Sash, and I figured it would make the most sense if Rayquaza's Life Orb, Smeargle is Scarfed, and Liepard is Focus Sash. Well, that would make the most sense to me. And even if Smeargle here is Sash, then I can just Gyro Ball, and unless his Spiky Shield predicts me, then, he's basically going to be in a lot of trouble. So the worst case scenario, Smeargle isn't Scarf, he goes for the Spiky Shield, and Rayquaza maybe gets a Swords Dance off. But this first turn, I'm just going to play it as safe as possible. I'm going to protect the Salamence in case he is Scarf, and I'm going to go straight for the Gyro Ball into Smeargle, and basically play it from there. If he's Scarf, I pick up the knockout, and I'll be in a huge advantage, and if he's Sash, then I can just Hyper Voice Gyro Ball the next turn. So regardless of what he does here, I know I'm in a pretty safe position, as long as I play smartly, and that's because I do end up protecting Salamence here, not giving him the chance to Scarf Dark Void, and lo and behold, he is Scarf Dark Void, but he actually Bronzong avoids the attack, and Rayquaza gets the Swords Dance up. So Sam looked visibly frustrated when he missed that Dark Void. Of course, I am carrying the Lumberry, so it actually didn't matter, but stuff like that can actually help you in your favor, because you can frustrate a player who thinks they're losing to RNG, and, sometimes they play on tilt, as we call it, and, get a little bit more frustrated with the game and make suboptimal plays. That first turn plays out perfectly. The only thing Sam gets is a +1 boost onto Rayquaza, but we've already seen that Rayquaza still isn't that much of an offensive threat, especially because it can't touch Bronzong with Dragon Ascent and Extreme Speed. Sam brings in Kyogre, which I think is an excellent Pokemon to bring in, and the only really viable option he had. I'm up 4-3 at this point, and I've eliminated Smeargle, and I haven't taken any damage yet, and I really want to capitalize off this lead. VGC 2016 is the kind of format where even if you're up significantly, all it takes is one big turn and your opponent can completely swing it around, so I still want to play a little bit smart and play methodically. I figure now it's probably a good time to set up Trick Room, and the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to go for the Double Edge into Kyogre, not Rayquaza, because Kyogre is the bigger threat. If I do enough damage to Kyogre, then it'll be in Precipice Blade's KO range, but he makes the great play of protecting with Kyogre and just going straight in with offense with the Rayquaza. So Double Edge goes into that, it fails, Dragon Ascent comes out, and that's going to be a knockout onto Salamence, and Sam still is cleverly not Mega Evolved. If he had Mega Evolved, I think that actually just would have outright lost him the game, because by knocking out the Salamence, I get the switch into Groudon, but the +1 boost there is enough for Dragon Ascent to pick up the knockout. Rayquaza also finally reveals its item of a Life Orb. However, I do get the Trick Room up, and that's kind of what I was hoping for. I was like, okay, well, if you protect Kyogre and you knock out Salamence, then that's a free Trick Room up. If you attack with both of your Pokemon, Double Edge will put your Kyogre in around 50%. That means even Water Spout and Dragon Ascent won't knock out Bronzong, so I know I'm guaranteed Trick Room. However, this is still a little bit tricky, because originally I was like, oh, I can just bring in Groudon and win the game, right? Because I can just Skill Swap and get the Sun up. But all Rayquaza has to do is not Mega Evolve, and that's why Sam has a Mega Evolve at this point, because of Airlock. And I realized after that, wow, this is actually pretty bad, because I'm kind of forced to switch into Kyogre, and my Kyogre and Bronzong can't touch his Kyogre. I don't have Thunder, and even if I did, he has Airlock. So I bring in Kyogre. I know the only thing going for me right now is that I have full 4 turns of Trick Room, and sure, he can protect here and there, but he's not able to get that much offense off if he doesn't Mega Evolve with Rayquaza, because of, or even just in general, the rain is basically canceled out, so Water Spout and Origin Pulse are doing less damage from Sam's end. Of course, I know it's reducing my damage output as well, but not too worried about that. This next turn, I decide that I'm going to at least set up Gravity for the Groudon in the back, and I'm just going to Ice Beam target the Rayquaza. Sure, he could switch out. He probably has Talonflame or Togekiss in the back, and, Ice Beam obviously does good damage against any of those, and it punishes him in case he doesn't protect him. But he does go for the safe Protect here. Still not Mega Evolving, which I believe is the right play. Gravity, more importantly, though, does go up. Ice Beam goes into the Protect, and here his Kyogre is able to get a pretty powerful Origin Pulse off. However, because once again the rain is negated from Rayquaza's Airlock, it actually doesn't even do over 50% to Bronzong, so I know I can take another turn with Bronzong. So That's one turn of Trick Room burn, but I still have 3 turns left. Don't know what his 4th Pokemon is though, which is pretty important, but I figure if I can knock out Rayquaza here or whatever switches in, can most likely have weather control in this game. So this next turn I actually go for the Gyro Ball into Rayquaza and the Water Spout. The reasoning for that is because I know even if he extreme speeds, that should knock out the Rayquaza, and if he switches out, that's an instant knockout onto anything that comes in, because, you know, Gyro Ball super effective against Togekiss, and Water Spout super effective against Talonflame, and Liepard is just really frail. So I know that this turn I should be able to pick up a knockout, bar a double protect on Rayquaza, or an extreme speed critical hit. He does finally Mega Evolve the Rayquaza, and I'm actually pretty content he stayed in, because if this turn plays out how I was, you know, playing basically accordingly, then I'll be able to just pick up the knockout into Rayquaza, and then I'll have weather control for the remainder of the game with Groudon Sun. So he does go for the extreme speed, but no critical hit there, which I'm really happy about. Obviously, Water Spout isn't really going to do very much, given that Kyogre is at like 25%, but more importantly, the Gyro Ball, because Rayquaza is at -1 defense from Dragon Ascent, combined with the Water Spout from Kyogre, is still enough to pick up the knockout, and that's a fainted Kyogre. So it is now 2-3 in my favor with 2 turns of Trick Room after this turn, but still far from over. His Kyogre here is going to be able to get the Origin Pulse off, and at this point I'm actually hoping he picks up a knockout so I get a free switch in into Groudon, but he actually misses the knockout on both of my Pokemon, which I think actually hurt me more than it helped me, because if he just picked up a knockout, then Groudon comes in for free and I just Precipice Blades. But instead, at this point I'm actually a little bit worried. I'm like, wow, did I actually just lose the game because Origin Pulse failed to knock my Pokemon out? So at this point I'm trying to think of a play, and at this point I actually thought his Talonflame was choice banded, so I was like, if he's banded Talonflame, I just lose the game. How can I get out of this? With only 2 turns of Trick Room left, I know he's going to be wanting to stall the turns out, so I figure this next turn, my best play is actually to Skill Swap and Scald the Talonflame. The reasoning behind this is that Talonflame right now is going to be able to get a Brave Bird off. You're obviously going to want a Brave Bird Kyogre, but in case you predict a Protect from Kyogre, then I just win the game by getting a Scald off against your Talonflame. But even if he makes the right play of Brave Birding the Kyogre, the Skill Swap will get rid of Gale Wings, which means Talonflame will not have priority under Trick Room. There's one more turn of Trick Room left after this turn, and I know his Talonflame most likely does not carry Protect, so kind of banking out the fact he doesn't have Protect here. He does go for the Brave Bird there onto Kyogre, which is the right play. You know, I obviously could have protected Kyogre and went for the Skill Swap, but then I would have lost the game if he just Brave Birded Bronzong, so not the risk I was willing to take. This I thought was my safest option. I do get rid of Talonflame's Gale Wings, which means that he does not have priority anymore, and with one last turn of Trick Room, I know I can nuke the Talonflame with a Precipice Blade should he be carrying it, or should he not be carrying Protect. So, Water Spout picks up the knockout onto Bronzong, and it is the very last turn of Trick Room now for me to take advantage of, but because of the play I was able to make last turn, now my full-powered Groudon comes in. Talonflame doesn't have priority, so it's basically rendered useless to a Precipice Blades, and Gravity is still up for a couple of turns, so don't even have to worry about Precipice Blades missing, and of course, Precipice Blades is a one-hit KO onto the Talonflame. So, bar anything crazy here, I know I've basically got the game sealed up. You know, obviously, he's not going to be something like Focus Sash Talonflame. I mean, even if he, yeah, maybe actually that could have been potentially helpful, but we knew he's not Sash, or at this point I assumed he's not Sash since he had Liepard in the back. So, Sam's going to make the best play of making the Protect onto Kyogre here, but Precipice Blades here is just going to be able to target down the Talonflame. So ultimately, I don't know if the Skill Swap play was actually necessary, since Sam told me he wasn't banded. This whole time I thought he was banded for whatever reason, and I was like, okay, that's the main issue, but he ends up not being banded, so I'm really happy about that, and now it's just Groudon against Kyogre. Trick Room expires, but we saw in the first game that single target Precipice Blades picks up the one-hit KO, so I mean, there's really nothing that can go wrong at this point, like, unless, like, I get a really low damage roll. Even a really low damage roll probably wouldn't save him, but I think Sam, you know, has to go for the Ice Beam there, hope that I don't knock Precipice Blades out, hope that Gravity ends, and then hope he can, you know, I miss a Precipice Blades or something like that, but yeah, at that point the game was basically sealed up, so I do end up winning against Sam 2-0 in the best of 3 set. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a like if you did, and giving me any feedback, and I'll be probably doing the finals very soon as well, since that was on stream. Anyway, I really enjoy doing this kind of content, and I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I do. So yeah, leave a like always if you did, and I'll see you guys next time. Alright, peace.